Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Right School Matters podcast, where we dive deep into the world of K-12 education, tackling some of the big questions and critical topics that help shape our nation's schools. And so I'm Paul Monteperto, and I have the privilege of being your host. And so whether you are navigating the school selection process or simply looking to better understand what makes a great educational fit for your children and your family, this podcast is here to help guide and empower you because we believe that when it comes to our children's future, the right school truly does matter. And so this podcast is sponsored by Family2Family Relocation and Real Estate, whose mission is to help families better understand the options available to them and better educate their children when searching for a new home. And so with that said, we are super excited to welcome Dr. Karen Leonard as our guest on the show today. Karen, how are you?
I am doing well, trying to stay warm.
Tell me about it. We're in Georgia and it doesn't typically get cold in Georgia, but I think it was 17 degrees when I left the house to take the kids to school this morning. You are in the Oklahoma City metro area. And so what's the temp out there?
It's 30 now. We finally are going to break freezing today. We typically have some of the same climate as in Oklahoma and Georgia, but we're just about 24 hours in advance.
Okay, gotcha. So, we did have school canceled yesterday. It never did snow in Marietta. Atlanta got snow, but you know how it is. If there's a threat of snow here, then they quickly cancel school.
It's the same thing here. Snowplows are few and far between, and yeah.
Gotcha. Well, I hope you're staying warm. You got a nice cozy sweater on, so that looks good. So, Karen, I really appreciate you being on the podcast with me today. I'm excited to talk about a topic that is likely very complex and confusing to a lot of folks out there because it's just so new. And that's this idea of artificial intelligence and its impact and influence in education. I mean, certainly we see AI all over the place, from self-driving cars to, helping rewrite our emails with Grammarly. Chat GPT is a very popular function for blog writing and certainly schools helping kids utilize that to generate ideas and things of that nature. But I really believe that even just personally, I don't know the depth of what AI truly can do. I do know that there are very different trains of thought on, how it can or should or shouldn't be used in K-12 education. And so I know that you have a good bit of experience in leaning into that topic, and I'm excited for our listeners to hear a little bit about what you have to say about that. But before we do, tell us a little bit about you and your role as the program manager of educational technology and micro-credentialing in the Oklahoma State Department of Education.
Yeah, a big jump from a private school, Mount Perrin Christian School in Kennesaw. I do work at a government level office. It's crazy to think I communicate daily with people across the country in my role, and even internationally, especially speaking AI. We've lived here in Oklahoma about 6 years. Traffic is delightful. People complain and I'm like, oh, y'all haven't seen anything. It's just a nice place. People are very friendly. Life is much slower than in Atlanta. And we've enjoyed it. It's been a nice change.
That's good. So 6 years. Wow. For those who are watching or listening, Karen used to be my neighbor, and we worked at school together for a few years. And so we know her on a personal level as well. But it's no surprise that traffic is one thing that comes up because, we all know what Atlanta traffic is like. And so that is probably a breath of fresh air for you and Trevor to have that slower pace there. But
we have a small airport, and in Atlanta you could jump on a plane and go anywhere. It takes us 2 or 3 legs to get anywhere. So
that's the trade-off. That's the trade-off. Well, good. Well, listen, I'm excited to have you on the show. And so I've got a few questions for you to help kind of generate our conversation about AI. And so the first thing is, I'd love for you to share 2 or 3 things that you believe to be critically important for people to know and understand about artificial intelligence and its influence in K-12 education. Can you talk a little bit about your experience there?
Absolutely. I think the first thing people think of when they think of AI is, especially in a school setting, cheating and the fact that teachers' jobs are going to be replaced. And, I don't see that as an issue. This is just one of the most exciting things that has come about, affecting the entire world, maybe
Yeah.
electricity and AI, because it's not going to go away. It's constantly evolving. We always tell our teachers to personalize learning. Every child is different. What can we do to make learning impactful for every student? And in the past, you were one teacher in a classroom of many students, and it just didn't seem very possible. But AI has that ability to help individualize learning, personalize it, even simple things like communicating with families that are non-English speakers. Translation, it can just revolutionize so much of what we do.
But the school setting it's so new and different. And
Right.
you mentioned the word cheating, and it's no surprise that that's kind of our first response, especially as a teacher, is, well, gosh, how am I going to prevent my students from now going to a source and having that source do all the work for them, and not have their voice or their brain involved in what they're doing. And I think that's going to be a huge learning curve for many schools and many teachers. And so, with that said, can you share a couple of thoughts or ideas, maybe some advice for schools and teachers as they navigate the AI landscape, and how it can best be utilized to serve their kids by providing that personalized learning that you described?
Absolutely. And I think one good thing, or one thing to keep in mind and be cognizant of, is AI is not for everyone and for everything. And many of those tools, if they're requiring sign-in, we know that there's age restrictions. So often when I'm talking with educators about implementation in a classroom, we're talking upper middle school and high school. I think that when you look at where our world is now, our fifth graders now will probably graduate from high school in 8 years and from college, hopefully in 12. So think back to where you were in 2013 and how different life has changed. And
Sure.
think of what it would be like in 2037 when they exit and go into the job force. And the fact that we're trying to be competitive with other countries. And I think it's going to cause a big shift in education from the, note-taking and memorization. We need to help our students understand how to apply what they're doing and create new things. Take that learning and go a step beyond. And I really think that if we're not talking with students and families about using AI and how to use it appropriately, students need that guidance. That they're going to use it, whether we say they can or not. So one of the things I developed was an acceptable use guidance policy that, I would recommend hanging in classrooms and say, here are the 5 different levels of usage. And for this assignment, you're at level 2. You're only allowed to use it for this and this, and you have to document or disclaim your use. At level 5, man, you can go all at it, but every assignment's different. And so I think that by approaching it in that way, it helps students see that we don't want them to become dependent on it, but it's a great thought partner, and it's a great starting point for many activities. I use it all the time myself.
Yeah, I think many of us do. Many of us do, and no one would look at me and say I'm cheating.
No.
I'm simply leveraging a resource and a tool to help enhance my business, the quality of my day.
And I think it's really important to ensure that people understand that the AI tool is just the middleman.
Right.
It starts with human interaction, human prompting, telling it what to do. The AI tool generates something. And I think that, if you just take that output, that would be cheating. You have to take that and you have to maybe take output from 2 or 3 different tools, combine it and give it your own voice and your own personality. And that's something that many people don't do. They just stop with the output, and it's not them.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, when we talk about this idea of personalization that you mentioned, in the school setting, um, businesses, people, organizations have a personality or a profile. And so you want to align
Right.
your marketing or the conversation or, whatever it is that you're pulling out of the AI generator to help represent your voice. And that means, tweaking, right?
Mhm.
And so that's a really, really good point. I'm curious. So what do you, as you've been in this space and probably are, networking not just with teachers, but other school district personnel about AI and how to best navigate its way into being utilized as a quality resource for teachers and students in the school district. What have you found to be the most common response of why people may be afraid of it?
Um, Boy, well, other than cheating,
Sure.
I think that there's the AI literacy impact. Right now, we can pull up on social media anything, and we're not often sure, is it human generated? Is it AI generated? Where does fact and fiction separate? And I think that many people are just kind of afraid that, I'm afraid, and I use it all the time, but how do I really ensure what I'm seeing is real and valid? And we have to teach our children that. There's a very interesting AI tool named I Am Sophie. And it is this human image that she moves her head and everything, opens her mouth and speaks. And I can hold conversations with her. So
Wow.
think about the fact that, some of our young, impressionable um, learners aren't able to discern truth and reality from AI generated. And I think just ensuring that we help students, families, educators, everyone realize what is true and what's not. And if we don't know, how can we verify validity of information?
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it actually aligns with internet literacy to begin with, right? Because just because it's on the internet does not mean it's true, right? I mean, that is a big thing that we start teaching kids when they start leveraging the web for resources in school. Is you have to consider the source and make sure that there's an accurate and valid credential behind it. You
Right.
mentioned, understanding whether it's real or not real in AI. I mean, certainly there are the things that are obviously not real, like that Instagram reel that's going around with the baby fighting the cat in the karate contest. I mean, that's hilarious. But obviously, a 1.5-year-old can't move at that rate and fight a cat like that. But nonetheless, there's so much out there that is difficult to discern, even just when our phone rings nowadays,
Right. Right.
with the chat bots and the robots and things of that nature. Um, and so that brings me to another question I wanted to ask, and that is, as parents and school leaders and teachers and kids, as we all continue down this road of learning a little bit more about what AI is and how it can appropriately be used in a variety of parts of our lives, what words of encouragement would you have for, let's talk about parents, parents of school age kids right now who, much like I was telling you before we went live, are having conversations with their kids because they're leveraging these AI tools like ChatGPT to
Right.
help generate ideas, and then figuring out how to take that idea and build a response or an essay or whatever it is from that is truly their own. And there is definitely a learning curve there. And so
Oh,
what kind of encouragement or advice would you have for parents in that space?
um, relationship building is obviously the first part, but we know that as our children get older and we're the parents and, they're not always willing to share everything with us. I just think kind of keeping on top of everything. And I know it's really hard. I do, obviously, for my role, lots of researching and finding new tools every day. Everything just constantly evolves, and just probably talking and, asking them what they know. I was talking to some teacher prep candidates at Oklahoma State University at a class, and some of them were like, we don't even use it because we're afraid that we're going to get caught cheating. And I think, anything a family member can do to say, here's too much, model appropriate use yourself.
Yeah.
I've seen a second grade teacher talk about some of the vocabulary when writing stories, your setting, your characters. And it was a great introduction because the students came up to her one by one, and she would give them information. Okay, so tell me the name of your characters. So it was kind of like a formative assessment of some of that terminology. She was able to put that in, and it generated the start of a story. And students could either take that and complete the rest of the story on their own, or if they weren't happy with it, they could reiterate it, a new version of it. And I think that was just a great example of modeling, showing them that, it's not doing everything for you. Your first stab isn't always going to be your final product. And we know students, like if a teacher is giving feedback on a document, how many of our students really go back and read all of the little comments that we put in there and do that? But I've noticed that when students are creating prompts, one of the first ways I've introduced it is to provide an image and allow students to use image creating tools to see who can get the closest to my image. And they realize that their first try isn't. So, they're back there revising to see who can get. And that's, I think, a skill: resilience, critical thinking, and just understanding that there's more to a tool than just cheating. It does take a lot of thought and input from a user.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you say that, because I don't know that would be the first impression that most people would latch onto. Most people would say it's a lazy tool, right? It's doing work for you. And so your perspective, I think, really offers a very, very different way to look at that. And when you think about the metacognition that's happening for a learner to accomplish what you just described, there are a lot of skills that are being developed in their thinking patterns in order to learn how to accomplish the goal of what you had set in front of them.
And those carry over to their daily life. And we often don't have that ability to teach those. So this is such a great way to even, have students print their prompts and see what the student was thinking of when they used that tool. There's a lot that we could learn just by looking at their thought process.
Yeah, no, so true. I'm watching the clock here. We've got a few minutes left. And so I've got one other question I wanted to ask you about AI. And I know we don't have a crystal ball, but it's just amazing how artificial intelligence has grown so quickly. And I anticipate it continuing to grow at that fast pace. And so when you look at the future of K-12 education, let's say the next 5 to 10 years, what are some things that you anticipate happening with regards to education evolving with the use of AI in the classroom?
I see that teachers are able to provide feedback faster. We know that the time between submitting an assignment and receiving the feedback. The faster students receive that, the better they're able to continue on and make those improvements. I know as an adjunct professor, we're using AI to grade a lot of the artifacts that are submitted. It's just the initial phase, and then I go through and do the final, but it saves me a ton of time.
Right.
You're able to level reading appropriate for different students. So you're in a 7th grade science classroom, you've got students that read at 12th grade and at 3rd grade. You can put that in there and have the text output at the different reading levels so everyone is able to converse. I just think, I know we're nowhere near understanding where it's going to be, but I was doing some coding yesterday and there was a tool that I could bring up and it could help me. It could view my screen, and I am not a coder, and it could tell me what I wanted it to do to fix some of the issues. And I'm like, wow. I can only imagine where it's going to take us.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, but I'd be honest if I didn't say it's a little scary too.
Yeah.
Just because of the uncertainty, and so, Karen, thank you so much for sharing those perspectives on AI and its influence on education. I want to shift gears real quick.
Sure.
You are in the Oklahoma City metro area. Like you said earlier, you've been out there for a few years with your family. And so for our viewers and listeners who have never visited Oklahoma City or don't know much about it, or maybe they're there and they're still learning the area, share with us a favorite restaurant that you have in the area.
We were just at one this weekend called Rev Mex. Oh my gosh, the spices and everything. We tend to go to a lot of locally owned restaurants. I think that's what makes the areas amazing. And boy, if you come out here, you have to come see our Oklahoma City Zoo. It's amazing. We have the Bricktown area downtown where we have a little canal. It's like a miniature San Antonio.
But yeah, actually, I've been through Oklahoma City one time. I was driving through on my way to Colorado and spent the night there years ago. But well, Karen, thank you so much for participating on this podcast. I really do appreciate it. It's good to see you. It was good to catch up with you. I wish you all the very best in your continuing leadership role out there with embracing this idea of AI and technology in schools. Like you said, it's not going away. This is only going to continue to become a larger part of our everyday. And I think the more and more people are educated about the realities of it, but also the benefits of how to manage it appropriately and responsibly, like much of everything else in our lives, then they may drop the sense of fear and really kind of lean into it. And the kids are the ones that are going to benefit because once they get out into that workforce, they're going to be relying on this concept, this idea a great deal, no matter what they're doing. So for our listeners and our viewers, thank you again for tuning into another episode of The Right School Matters. We are excited to be able to bring some great information, critical topics and ideas about K-12 education, all with the mission of supporting families to make better decisions about where they choose to educate their kids. The options are continuing to grow, so don't underestimate the opportunities for your children. With that said, we wish you a wonderful day and God bless.